right. So this week, well, let me just say this. Let me say this one more time. Last week, an article was published in ESPN on April 1st, and this was not an April Fool's Day. This was actually as real as it's going to get. The article is written by Tim McManus and Jeremy Fowler, and the article was called Inside Eagles 2025 Friction as Jalen Hurts stands at the crossroads. And I wanted to dive into this because for one thing, it reinforces a lot of things that Eagles fans already knew, or at least could get a sense of, just from seeing the body language from A.J. Brown, from the tweets to a lot of the, just the decisions. And it just seemed like there was a lack of effort and so many different position groups. Maybe not so much the defense, but certainly the offense. And you go from this Super Bowl caliber team and winning the Super Bowl to all of a sudden this offense is just predictable. We have this incredible running back that's not producing. We got a talent. We have the highest paid offense in the entire league, and yet we're predictable. We're not making plays. The pass game is abysmal. So what is going on? And this article was great because it really did a deep dive. It took some sources. Now, I will say this much. Anonymous sourcing is already kind of a low blow, I will say. It's interesting that it's great that we get this information, but I know you're probably on the same camp as I am. It's like, really anonymous sourcing is a low blow because it's like, well, at the end of the day, if you have a problem with the guy, go and talk to him. Work it out as a team.
Yeah.
Why does this need to come into the media? And that was already an issue last year. You got a problem with somebody, confront them, talk to them about it, and just be, player to player. Keep it in the team. And it almost kind of leads to hint that maybe that was already done. Maybe that was already sought out and then it just wasn't working. We don't know. But nonetheless, we have an article of what was happening, at least a glimpse of what was happening inside the Eagles in the 2025 season. And I'm going to I want to start off because there's a lot to unpack with this article, but what this reveals about Jalen Hurts as a leader. And I want to kind of start there. And obviously feel free to jump in anytime, but here's a couple things that it point out as Hurts' strengths. And let me just kind of start off by saying this article, after reading this, I don't think it paints Jalen Hurts in a bad light. Like, I think it's true, it's authentic, but I don't think this is something where it's like, oh shoot, Eagles fans need to worry. I really don't. I don't, that's not my immediate takeaway here. I think we see this as a learning opportunity and certainly a period of debrief of what were the mistakes, why they happened. And we're going to give you our take from the leadership lens, but nonetheless, this is not, oh shoot, you got to start looking for another team. Like, this is not that kind of article. So first, to start off with, here are the strengths that Jalen Hurts, that they painted with Jalen Hurts. Number one, a world-class work ethic with a Kobe Bryant-like obsession. Okay. He's weathered the storm of constant offensive staffing changes. That is certainly something that really needs to be taken into account, especially when we're talking about an offense there's a lot of turmoil. This is not producing the way it should have been. And
100%.
and I got to say this much, it's not going to change anytime soon. Because when you have a head coach that is a game manager and not an offensive play caller, you're always going to have, look, okay, the Eagles, let's just say Travis Mannion comes in and he just knocks the socks off the place. He has a very well-developed offense that is not predictable. There's a lot of movement, a lot of under center, and everything is producing in full cylinders. This guy's going to be gone. He's going to be on another team, come a year from now. That's the nature of the NFL. It's just going to be that way. So I love to kind of bring that up that could be, that's really hard for a young quarterback, or any quarterback, but it's not something that's going to change. Every season's going to be different. You got new players. You're probably going to have new coaching staff every single season. So, but nonetheless, he's weathered it. He's made through. his deep ball accuracy. Yep, absolutely. You saw that in the Super Bowl. I mean, there's plenty of examples there, but the pass to Devontae Smith and the end zone when they were already up, 28 to nothing, something like that. That was incredible. And he's all outside the numbers. He's an incredibly accurate passer. Steely resolve, unshakable under pressure. He steps up and he elevates when the game's on the line. He is clutch. That is something he's proven time and time again. He has very high standards that can elevate his teammates, or at least some of his teammates. Again, going back to his work ethic, I would say he definitely leads by example. Thrives when he has something to prove. He thrives off of bad press, which is interesting. Everything from the Alabama when he was benched to playing for Oklahoma to when the whole transition with Wentz when he was on the team to the Super Bowl run. He seems to elevate when there's a lot of doubt. That's the pattern that's emerging here. In the article, they pointed out that one of the sources that's close to him said he's at his best when he has something to prove. When he is the underdog, he is the best. And he wins the big games. Look at his playoff resume. He's been...
Well, this
Go
is
ahead.
this is another statistic I'd like to bring up.
Yeah.
I saw this on Grit Philly, or Gritadelphia is the Instagram page. I follow like 17 Philadelphia sports pages. So QB playoff win-loss record versus playoff teams. Patrick Mahomes 23-8, Josh Allen 14-9, Lamar Jackson 17-11, Joe Burrow 11-14, Jalen Hurts 16-4. So he wins the big games.
Yeah.
Not to mention CJ Gardner-Johnson, who was a strong safety for us when we won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. He tweeted this morning or yesterday, 7 different systems and still was able to get back and win a Super Bowl. And then he goes off to say, why do you do this? Like, come on, people will continue to bash this man for what reason? Plenty of other QB news we can talk about. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more with that. It's like, I get the article is not necessarily bashing him. Like, there's a lot of friction. I think with a lot of talent, there's a lot of expectation, right? Like, I think anyone could say that. But my whole question to anyone that criticized it is like, the year we won the Super Bowl, I remember a lot of Philadelphia critics were like, well, Philadelphia is fighting on the sidelines. They're not aligned. Like, even when we were like on that 10-game winning streak where we were like 13-3 and we went in and like lost to Washington on that field goal. But everyone was still writing them off. They're not going to win. They're not going to win. And then they blow out every single team they played. The closest game they played was against the Rams. And it's like, it goes back to, you have 31 other quarterbacks that are not nearly as successful as this guy. 16-4 against playoff teams. Has 7 different systems in the amount of years he's been there. I don't even know how many I think it's like 5 offensive coordinators or 6. And has a Super Bowl, been to the Super Bowl twice, has a Super Bowl ring, and I've been in the playoffs 5 out of 6 years he's been a quarterback. I don't know. I don't know if there is a lot of it. Like, I don't know how, but I think my theory on it too is like, the AJ Brown stuff didn't work. So the media chased the likes and the views for the AJ Brown stuff the past like 3 months. Like, where's AJ going to end up? Where is he going to end up? And then Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni are like, he's an Eagle.
Yeah.
Like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Could they trade him after June? Like, I did hear talks that they may trade AJ Brown after June. I don't understand the reasoning behind that. Like, why that makes a difference or not. But
There's like tax, and again, something to
do like
do.
money and
Right.
But
Right.
and I should know that, but I think that failed. That agenda failed, and now they need to, like, circle back. It's like, "Alright, let's circle back to Jalen because we can't it's just static with talking about AJ Brown. We can't get what we want." Um, but to say, like, almost allude that he's not successful, I don't know. I think that that's a pretty he's not typical, and I think that's what commentators hate and, like, analysts hate. I think that's what they dislike the most is him not being a typical quarterback, you know?
Yes, he's introverted. Okay, so let's just compare him and Josh Allen. Okay,
Yeah,
Josh Allen, you could see on Hard Knocks or any of the in-depth team. There's a lot of personality there. There's a lot of
yeah.
emotion, and I would say from a personality standpoint, it's probably the exact opposite of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is introverted. He's very stoic. He doesn't want to show a whole lot of emotion. At the end of the day, trust me, I'm an introvert. And sometimes people get this impression that I'm trying to be standoffish. It's like, no, honestly, I'm just shy sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
yeah,
just don't talk, man.
yeah. It's like if I don't have anything really to say, I'm probably just not going to say anything. That's
Just
just
not
that's
gonna
just
say
how it is.
anything.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm like, I don't want to make a fool of myself, and I probably would if I opened my mouth, and usually do. Um, so and it's almost like the media can't stand a guy who just likes winning and he'll just do enough to win. I mean, it's not like I don't think Jalen Hurts has ever came out and said, "Yeah, I'm going to light up the scoreboard. I'm going to have every single record out there." That's not his game.
Well, what's crazy about it too is, like, they hated that before, like, they're doing just enough to get by, and then all of a sudden they're putting up 55 in the NFC Championship.
Right. Right.
And then all of a sudden they're putting up 30 points before the other team scores in the Super Bowl,
Hmm.
which is not great for, like, viewers and marketing for
Right.
the Super Bowl, a complete
Right.
blowout.
Right.
Um, but, like, you didn't like him when he was hardly winning, and then you didn't like him when he's blowing teams out by 40 points,
Right.
you know? And
And
then
plus,
the excuse was too, and this is always the craziest excuse to me, and I can't figure out why. Like, I don't claim to be a football analyst, or I don't claim I'm a fan, right?
right. Likewise.
But, like, from a fan's perspective, when people say, "Well, look at everyone around them." Well, yeah, dude. That's the team. Like, of course, like, can any team win with one guy? No. So now you're saying that he's bad, be and he only is winning because of the threats he had on the offensive side of the ball and how dynamic that defense was. Well, like, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but when Saquon Barkley was a free agent, there was 31 other teams that could have signed him.
That's right.
31 other teams decided not to. You know,
Yeah.
when Devontae Smith was in the draft pile with everyone else, AJ Brown when he was on the Titans, like, 31 other teams could have signed him. They decided not to. You know, Lane
Yeah.
Johnson, our first round draft pick from Oklahoma at right tackle. You know, Jason Kelsey, 6th rounder. Like, all like how like 32 teams passed him up for 6 rounds. And then you have the defensive side of the ball. Your Cooper DeJean, you have and not to go off because this is more about Jalen Hurts, but, all these teams had their opportunity at seeing the talent and taking advantage of it, and they just chose not to. So you're gonna take away the success, and you're gonna almost, like, downplay what this guy's doing because he has a solid, great team behind him. Like, that come on, dude. Like,
Yeah.
that's not right.
And it really is interesting how, I mean, let's face it, when we signed Jalen Hurts, we were still under this impression that Wentz was our franchise quarterback, right?
Everyone was, dude. I
And
didn't
then all
agree
of a
with
sudden, he
yeah.
just he blossoms, and then oh, Wentz is gone. Hurts is our guy now. Like, and it's almost and on top of that, he takes us to the Super Bowl twice, wins one of them. And honestly, like, could have easily won the first one. Like, both of those performances were impeccable. Like, they were
That
just amazing.
they were yeah, yeah, dude. Like, the
Yeah,
first one Dude, I still remember going to bed that night and, like, I couldn't sleep. I was so upset. I was, like, so upset that we lost the way that we did, and it was like a typical Andy Reid fashion. Like, the penalty, I was like, "If we get a pass interference, he's gonna run the clock and he's gonna kick a field
Yeah.
goal."
Well, I mean,
And
there's so many you can make and there's so many moments like the fumbled snap and the this and that, and there's so many like that was a rough one for any Eagles fan, and that's why that last Super Bowl was so great. Like, it was just
oh, dude, it was
and it's almost like, "All right, guys," especially Eagles fans, "Relax. Relax, guys."
now, okay,
We
so
went
this is
years without a Super Bowl and
years.
so many the McNabbs, the T.O.s, and losing that one to the Patriots, came back and won and beat the Patriots. It's like we had this revenge streak. It's been awesome to be an Eagles
Yeah,
fan
dude.
for the past 10 years. So let's break it down for a little bit. And here's what I have to say. The Eagles have a problem. Okay. And every team has a problem. The NFL is extremely competitive. It's hard to win in the NFL. And on top of that, you've got egos. You have, dollar amounts. There's so many different distractions nowadays. So let's dissect the problem and let's figure out a way to win. Okay. So in this article, they talked about there's the pushback for him going under center, his pushback specifically going under center. In the article, it says playing from under center is something Hurts continually fights inside the building. One source said, Hurts doesn't like to turn his back to the defense. He prefers to process coverages with everything in front of him, the source said. And a source close to the Hurts hints that he prepared during the offseason for a specific Eagles offense, the traditional offense, the shotgun style. And then he was reliant on the shotgun formation only to be asked later to implement a more under center work. Okay, so let's break this down here for a second. When I hear this, the first thing I think about is there's poor communication. Okay, so poor communication on Hurts, poor communication from the Eagles and the Eagles staff. If you're thinking about changing up this offense, which I get it, because as a team, we should be always looking to improve. We shouldn't just be being complacent, thinking that the strategy from last year, the strategy from the Super Bowl is going to be completely fine for this year. Like, it's never going to work. You always need to be looking to improve. That's the Nick Saban method, the Signetti method. It's like that's not enough. Even though we just won it all, we need to be improving. How are we going to be growing? So, but on the same time, Hurts could also said, hey, are we making any changes next year? What's my off-season strategy need to look like? Like, what can I be doing in the off-season
What
to
do I
prepare?
what film do I need to study?
That's right. That's
What
right.
what
So,
should I be what should I be looking at to ensure when I go into camp, um, like, because he needs to be 20 steps ahead of everyone else.
right,
Because
right.
if he's not getting it, like, well, then you gotta imagine, like, the offense isn't getting it,
That's right.
especially
That's
with
right.
him being who he is of, like you brought up earlier, like, that Michael Jordan mentality, like, or Kobe Bryant mentality, like, first in the building, last to leave, studying everything, reviewing film all the time, like, if he's not able to process it, there had to have been, like you're saying, a massive break in communication.
Yeah, right. It has to be. That's the only thing I can think of here. Now, aside from that, again, Hurts could have said this, and the same time, the Eagles coaching staff could have said, "Hey, Jalen, listen, this offseason, this is one of some of the things I want." The moment you started thinking and discussing what our strategy is going to be for next year, he should have been the first one to let know of that. Like, he should know what's going on so that he can prepare. So that it's a communication breakdown, I think, on both ends. But nonetheless, okay. Jalen Hurts came into this season thinking it was going to be one way. It ends up being another way. And we have Kevin Patullo coming in saying, hey, we need to do some under center work because there's a lot of effectiveness with that. It's going to be, even Saquon Barkley was quoted in here, this article saying, it's easier to run downhill when the quarterback's under center. Like, we get enough speed, and that's going to help us out in a lot of ways, giving the defense some different looks, and it's creating a little bit more confusion versus the static we're just going to be in shotgun all the time. So that becomes predictable. Defense can load the box, start playing zone, and all these other things start breaking down. And I'm not even going to mention the fact that, hey, this offensive line is the other wild card in this whole thing because they're kind of banged up, and that's kind of
Yeah.
uncommon. Like where like all of a sudden it's like Jurgens is saying he's playing with so much pain during the season.
Well, that's another thing, dude. It's like if you got like we got what 3 weeks till the draft. So I don't know, man. Like if you have that much back pain, and not even as a fan, like as someone who actually like I've struggled with back pain from my military career, like really bad, really, really, really bad back, and like. Dude, you can't continue. You can't keep trucking on, man. Like, no one's gonna give you a medal at the end and be like, "Hey, bro, thanks for destroying your body for us." Like, you're not gonna be able to touch your toes in 5 years,
right,
especially with, like, the way that the offense is structured. Like, it's 4th and if it's 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, like, you know, like, what we're running.
right,
You know what
right.
I mean? Like, but, so I think him because he just spoke out with, like, "I'm gonna continue to play, I'm gonna push through." That was recently, but
hmm
now it brings me to, I wonder what our draft class is gonna look like.
Yeah, that'd be a whole nother discussion. Is what are the areas to focus on? I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to get some more hogs on that offensive line, in my opinion. Um,
A right tackle is for sure coming,
yeah, for sure.
and
Because
then
yeah, I don't know how many more years Lane has left, and I think it's
he's got
likely
1
this is going to be
year.
his last. I want to go back to the community, the under center. So okay, okay, we get it. The fact that Jalen's been prepping this off season, that he's reluctant to want to go under center. Okay, and you've been planning it on doing shotgun the whole off season, whatever the case may be. Nonetheless, leaders need to be able to adapt. Like, okay, poor communication. So what do we just let the status quo be? And all of a sudden now you're going to push against the system. The system is telling you that you need to make this change because, for a variety of reasons. Hey, our offense is being too predictable. Kevin Patullo, which I'm sure is a great coach, is doing his best to say, hey, we need Jalen, we need to show him different looks because otherwise this is what's going to happen. And what's going to happen was evident every single Sunday or whenever the games were. So he was pushing back, and I feel like in that position, that's where he fell short. Is because at the end of the day, you got to be able to adapt. You got to be flexible, and this is where we see a lot of these comparisons. And I'm going to come back to this here shortly. Where if you saw The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and when he was under Doug Collins, okay, this is the 1989 season. What we saw in The Last Dance with Michael Jordan is that we saw an offense that was centered around him, where everything is, we're going to get Jordan the ball, and everybody just clear out, let Jordan take over. Well, defenses get smart. And when he was going against the Pistons in 1989, I guess it was like Eastern Conference Finals, something like that.
Yeah.
And again, don't quote me on these. I'm not a huge basketball guy, but this is what it was evident to me is that their strategy was whenever Jordan gets the ball, hack the hell out of him, foul him. He comes in that paint, put him on the ground, double teaming him.
And I'm
Take
pretty sure,
away
like,
Jordan, you take away their
yeah,
offense.
I'm not like a basketball NBA
Yeah,
guru, but I'm pretty sure like the '89 Pistons wasn't that the bad boy era?
yeah. Bill
Yeah,
Lambier. They had
yeah,
a couple
yeah,
other
dude. Yeah.
guys. Yeah,
There were some rough boys playing on that team.
100%. And let's not sugarcoat this. The defense those years in the NBA was a hell of a lot better than defense nowadays. Like where it's like I'm
Right.
pretty sure everybody. Anyway, I'm not going to get
Yeah.
into that.
Well, yeah, we don't. Yeah.
But nonetheless, the whole point was when they fire Doug Collins and they promote Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson comes in and he says, "I have this mentality that we're going to do the triangle offense," and this was a strategy. I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a famous coach that came up with the triangle offense. And the whole idea is it's not just one player, it's the team. And we're going to be moving the ball around so that it's not just Jordan scoring, it's the whole team scoring. And Jordan's very reluctant to want to give into this because He's used to, I get the ball. I score 50 to 60 points a game. That's how we win. You're telling me this is going to take the ball out of my hands? And he was kind of pushing back on that. History is going to show that once this started becoming a place, it was no longer a factor that they took out Jordan. It's the rest of the team is now improved. They're scoring. Everybody has a chance to score, and that's going to be a better fit for us. And then, lo and behold, this leads to 6 NBA titles in a span of 9 years.
Which
Okay,
is crazy.
which is insane. Now, I don't know if it's just because that also helps having Scottie Pippen and and Rodman and all these names, but here we go, and Jalen Hurts is at the precipice of this change now. So with a new coach coming in, now Travis Manning, who the offensive coordinator of the Eagles, is going to say, and we're going to see more motion, more under center, more play action, more timing, more trust in the system, less improvisation. I'm going to come back to that here in just a second. Less control at the line. Okay, so it's going to be this more team-centered, giving the defense different looks. And obviously, this is going to be one of those situations where even though Hurts was pushing back on this at the time, it's like, Jalen, you got to be flexible. You got to be able to adapt because this is what's best interest of the team. And the leader should always show that humility, be coachable. So if this isn't the best interest of the team, that's good for me because I'm here to serve the team. This is not just my show. This is the team. And it's proven that if we're able to do this and leaders are able to do this, you can have massive success as long as the strategy is sound. As long as everybody's executing and everybody's bought in. So I thought that was interesting. So I mentioned this here just a minute ago about how he diverts from the game plan and changes play calls. This is what I thought was interesting. I didn't know this going into this article, and as just the avid fan, but apparently Eagles offensive players who they know that he isn't afraid to change play calls and make adjustments when they get up to the line, or even if they're on the sideline. One of the teammates said, you never know what play is coming out of the huddle when Hurts is leading it. And in the past, he has been known to signal a route that hadn't been installed by the coaches. Key example was the 10-7 win against the Packers in November. Now, you remember this, right? We're up 10-7, I believe. We're on Green Bay's 35-yard line, 33 seconds to go, and it's 4th and 6. In this situation, Hurts keyed up A.J. Brown. And so Sirianni made a call. Hurts changed it up, and he wanted to throw a deep route, deep corner end zone for A.J. Brown to score it. And that wasn't, in fact, the call. So they tried to do this. They failed. And what I think was interesting is that even though this was a decision between Hurts and Brown, Sirianni took the blame for it, which I respect a lot because I think to everybody else who's watching, we're just kind of like, oh, what the hell is Sirianni doing? Like, why would he make that call?
Yeah.
But sure enough, this was a change by Hurts. So what we're seeing here is, and I go back and forth, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, because hey, at the end of the day, this is the Super Bowl MVP. Okay. He's had a lot of success with the Eagles. I do think he is entitled to some flexibility, especially if he can be proven, or if it is proven that he can make some decisive decisions, some good decisions, and he's earned it. I think the coaches are allowed to have some trust in their quarterback to make a call based on what they're seeing on the field. Okay, I get that. But this is one of those situations where maybe his decisiveness maybe that wasn't a good decision in that case, and it certainly wasn't, as history has shown. But how much flexibility is too much flexibility?
Well,
And what are your thoughts?
I think in a 10-7 game, in November, that a lot of it, and it's 4th and 6. I don't know if that's it. I don't know if I don't think so. No. I think you go out with a call. Like you go out with a call and then you let the box do what they're paid to do. and then we let the box read it. Offensive coordinator signals it in. If there is if there's an audible, if there's a play change, whatever contingencies you have lined up for this situation, I don't I don't think the quarterback and the wide receiver should be just like, this is what we're doing, do it. Like I just that's my personal opinion. Like I just don't think in a tight game like that, I think it's really different. It's different because in the Super Bowl, him and Devontae Smith did that. They were from my understanding, like, yeah, that play was called, but I think it was like on the contingency of like the coverage that Kansas City was sitting in,
Yeah.
and it was up to Jalen to pull the trigger or not. Like, do you want to have him go deep, or you want to have whatever the alternative route was? Like, then they did the shotgun signal, and he went deep and scored. So, like, but you're up by 30 points.
Okay, there's key difference.
Yeah, there's a key
Yes.
difference. There's not a lot of room for error still, but there's more room. There's a little bit more. There's a little bit room for error compared to a 10-7 game, where it's like, dude, you just need to get this 6 yards, and that's
Yeah.
it, and it's the
Yeah.
ball game. Like, why are we
Or
taking
we
shot?
just kick a
Like,
field goal here.
kick a
Like
field goal,
that's
get 6 yards. Like, why are you taking a shot deep? Like, it's not 3rd and 6.
right. Right.
And then I hate the bring this up because it is giving me PTSD, but like, the defense was probably prepared for AJ Brown to run a slant because that's what they were doing all year in a situation like a 4th-and-6, 4th-and-4 situation on their side of opposite side of the 50, and AJ Brown is running the slant and he's extremely hard to stop. So you kind of can anticipate it, but like, I don't know. I just don't think that's a situation where they're standing too close to the trees can backfire. And like, yeah, he might be able to read it really well, but you know, that's why you have a staff in the box to analyze. Like, they're seeing things that you can't from a
That's
macro
right.
level of like, even by like a few steps of coverage that they can see, like, hey, there's going to be a gap here, here, and here. So I wouldn't do that. No, I think that's a little bit too much flexibility. Um, yeah,
I
and
agree. I
Sirianni,
agree.
I think Sirianni's he's always been that way. I think he's a champ. Taking he falls on the sword, and he falls on the sword
Yes.
hard, man.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. Absolutely.
that dude takes so much heat for all the BS that some of these guys bring into that room with the media stuff, with personal obligations and issues that these guys are having. Like, Sirianni takes the arguing on the sidelines, like, he takes a lot of heat. But I also think too that comes with a young coach, and I think he understands with like, we pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud. So like,
Yeah.
he understands the atmosphere, and he knows he's younger, and he's not going to let these guys bark at him, and he's going to bark back.
And I think that's the most important thing. It's almost kind of like that, the mentality of praise in public, criticize in private. And it's
Yeah,
like, I think, and this article even talked about, they said, you know what? I think there needs to be more accountability of Jalen and less yes men around Jalen. I think,
for
if
sure.
anything, it might, from reading this, and even though I'm not an expert, haven't spent a lot of time interviewing Eagles like the sources have, or the writers have, there's a lot of yes men. There's a lot of, well, okay, Jalen just won the Super Bowl. Like, let's give him some authority here, and not a lot of, because the what we're talking about here, and when you were talking, I'm hearing a lot of this. It's the idea of decentralized command that we talk that
Yeah, we talk about that all
Jocko
the time.
talks about extreme ownership, right? Where it's, I want to give my young leaders some authority to make calls on the field as long as it's within the parameters that you clearly set. And if it fails, okay, you got to hold them accountable. You debrief it, you figure it all out. But it just seems to me that what we saw last year was this pattern of, like, there's not a whole lot of holding him in check. There's not a whole lot of, hey, I hear you. I hear you want to make this call. But but at the end of the day, the coach needs to make this call in this situation. It's 10-7. Like, there needs to be some clear lines of what those parameters are. And were those parameters smart in the first place? Like, at the end of the day, it's like clearly he didn't understand that. There was no, hey, Jalen, we're going to give you authority to make these calls, but here's the parameters. It needs to be when you see this look, or it needs to be when we have some healthy insurance. We got a 2-score lead at this point. We got a little bit more flexibility at this point. We want to give you that authority. You've earned it. You've earned our trust with that. But when these game time decisions are on the line, you have to trust that the coaches have a better look. They have a better strategic
Yeah.
picture, and we need you to be on board with that. And there can't be pushback on the game. If you have pushback, tell us in practice. Tell us in the film room, and we'll work that out so we can talk about it. But when the game's on the
I
line, you got to
yeah.
trust our instincts on this one,
I got two things with that. One, the first thing is I think that decision was probably made because they had 0 trust in Kevin Patullo. And I
Yeah.
think that
And
they were
respect. Yeah, trust and respect.
and
Yeah.
respect, and they were probably just like, "You know what, dude? We're tired of this. Run a fade. I'm gonna meet you in the back of the end zone," right? So I think that unfortunately, and that's ego driven right there, like that. You don't have to
Right.
like the dude, you don't have to respect the dude, but he's still the coach.
Right.
And you can't just play backyard football and expect it to work against a bunch of other guys that are as talented as you are.
Right. 100%,
Um,
man. Especially in a 10-7 game against the
yeah,
Packers, who have a fantastic defense.
fantastic defense. Second point with the accountability, I completely agree. If the coaching staff does not hold him accountable, what's going to happen? I grew up in South Philadelphia. The city is going to hold him accountable. And that is going to be significantly worse for the team than the coaching staff. And what I mean by that is like the city's going to force the hand. So if we have a similar season this upcoming season than we did last year, the city will force Howie Roseman's hand to start negotiating a trade. And I like it happened with Donovan McNabb. They traded him. It was
Mhm.
like 16 years ago, 2 days ago. They traded him to the Redskins. No one was expecting it. Like, and then, so I do think that the city has a massive, like, they hold their players accountable, dude. And like, as much as they love Jalen Hurts, as much as the Eagles fan base loves Jalen Hurts, um, I've seen them love players. I mean, they made a song for Terrell Owens, and then by the next year, they were burning his jersey in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. That's a
so
great point. That's a great point. And, for the sake of time, there was a couple more points I want to make on this. But no, it's funny how like you brought up that Donovan McNabb trade. That was the wildest thing, and I was obviously a lot younger when
yeah,
this all
dude.
happened. I didn't really understand like why that would. It's like that was our guy, man. That was, but all the same, it's like it's whether you're on a football team or you're in a business, the same thing applies. It's like, look, or in the military, it's like, look, the officer's got to make the call. Officer has to make the decision. In this case, we got the coaches are the officers, and Jalen Hurts is the NCO, or however you want to kind of break it
Yeah, yeah,
down. But it's
yeah.
like they got to make the calls, and this is where Jalen Hurts needs to trust that, needs to respect that, and as soon as you start making decisions that are not in line, now we have a big leadership problem. And now this needs to be adjusted because there, like you said, there is no room for error, especially in a city as patriotic and as passionate as Philly is. So one of the things I want to mention here is this resistance to motions and shifts, and it's along the same line that we were just talking about. But I thought this was interesting. So apparently, Kellen Moore, so was the Eagles offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl year, had tried to implement new offensive concepts that Hurts did not always embrace, per multiple team sources. One of the sources said they believed that the changes concerning motions and shifts, Hurts was not receptive to the idea, and a source said Hurts was willing to experiment with the new wrinkles in 2024, but if they were not paying off immediately, he was quick to pivot and express his discomfort. And multiple team sources described the relationship between Moore and Hurts in 2024 as tense at times. So again, it's just going back to this lack of flexibility, lack of adaptability. And it's almost like I want to say and this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but it's look, Jalen is a great quarterback. Let's be real. He throws a hell
Yeah,
of a
dude.
ball.
Yeah.
And he is on when he's on. And honestly, when the game is on the line, he's your guy. And if we're playing the Super Bowl, absolutely Jalen Hurts is my guy. But all the same, it's like you are still not Michael Jordan in football. You still have a lot to prove. And you don't know everything. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But when there's coaches are coming to you saying they want to make these adjustments, there's a damn good reason. It's because, hey, we need to adapt. We need to overcome. We need to show these defenses some new looks because otherwise this predictability, which multiple teams tweeted about last year, about how predictable it is.
Oh, dude.
Even
Oh, man. Yeah.
GJ
Yeah.
even
He
said
did,
after the
dude.
game, they were like, was the offense predictable? He said, I don't even think he had a response, but he was just kind of like,
He like
yeah,
smiled in the camera. He was just like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
like
it is.
he's a very outspoken dude. I mean, we traded him and re-signed him twice, I think. But like,
Yeah,
he's pretty outspoken, but like that's a vet
yeah.
that's been playing. He's been on multiple teams. He's on the Bills now, but like, and he loved Philly. He loved Philly,
Love
and
Philly.
Philly loved him. Like he
Yeah.
was, in my opinion, like they called him a locker room liability. I think that's why they got rid of him. But like,
He was a
like
Philly guy for sure,
he's a Philly
but just
guy
a little
through and
wild,
through.
little loose cannon. Loose
Yeah,
cannon was
he's
a
a
good way to
loose
put it.
cannon. But like
Yeah.
for him to even when I saw that, I was like, respect this dude so much because he had the opportunity. So this is crazy to say, but everyone should take notes from that because if we're talking about the same clip, he had the opportunity presented to him to the team that got rid of him for a second time after he was a vital, critical asset on the defense in the Super Bowl year to blast them
Yeah.
on a media platform, on a
Yep.
national media, on a stage.
Right.
And
Right.
he decided not to. He kind of he was like, I don't
Yeah.
know,
I
like,
mean, he said without saying. Yeah.
he said it without
Yeah.
saying it, but he could have went in, dude, and he
He
didn't. And
should have.
like I think that's like one, like if for all the media BS we have going on in the locker room, like you
Right.
should probably take notes from a guy that I would never tell you to take notes from. But like,
No.
he was outspoken and just crazy. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was, man. You got to not to go off the rails like I always do, but like, for him to sit there and be like, yeah, it was the most predictable game we played all year.
Yeah.
And
And
we got to get uncomfortable, man. That's what like every single like podcast I talk to, especially with like successful people talking about. Like I watched a podcast with Rob Dyrdek. He did like ex-professional skateboarder. He's on track to be a billionaire. Like literally dropped out of high school and moved to California to
yeah,
skateboard. Um, everyone says the same thing. You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
that's how you learn.
And the one thing, and this is so dumb to relate this to, and I'll admit that this is a stupid analogy. When I got to basic training, when I got to infantry school, I remember I had a drill sergeant was like, you might as well get comfortable with being very uncomfortable now, and your life will be a whole lot easier. And I didn't know what he meant. And then I remember I got issued all of our equipment and shirts. And I'm very particular with fabric. Like
Mm.
like my skin just like I hate it, dude. Like I hate itchy fabric on my skin, especially if it's hot and I'm
Hmm.
sweating. And
And
I
something
remember,
about brand new T-shirts. I don't know if you
dude,
have
and
that feeling too.
it was like the Sophie
Yeah.
brand where it was like
Yeah.
kind of prickly, uncomfortable. And I remember I put it on. I just remember being like, oh, this is what he meant by that. And I was like, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like, I literally don't have a choice
Yeah.
but to wear this shirt for the next 5 months. And like
100%.
every single one was like that. And that's the most like probably the dumbest analogy I've ever used on this. But
No,
like,
you're 100% right, man. In fact,
like,
my boss now always kind of says it's like every single day you should be putting yourself in uncomfortable situations because you're going
yeah,
to
dude.
learn. And as soon as you become complacent, you will start to decay. That is, and
Dude,
and mark that quote. I'm going to come back to that quote here in a second, but that is so true. It's like as a leader, you should always be looking to improve. Always be looking to educate yourself, get yourself in that uncomfortable area because that's where growth happens. And you talk going back to the outspoken side of things. I just want to hit this last point, and then I want to get into hey how we solve these problems. Okay,
yeah.
the last major thing is the communication gap between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. Now, here's and this was, I thought this was fantastic when they got into this. It's okay, like we said a short time ago, Hurts is an introvert. Even though it didn't say this, I would argue that A.J. Brown is as well. Despite the things you hear, if you ever listen to him and just kind of like hear his interviews and stuff like that, I get this impression that he is too. And the reason why is because they both are internalizing their frustrations. And I feel like that is I can attest to that as an introvert. I think there's a lot more going on internally than on the external. Well, what you're saying and how you're communicating things. Now, I know that may not make sense because A.J. Brown was anything but internal when it comes to airing out everything in the media. Okay, this product that we're dealing with now is his making. Okay, you let him in, and they're going to make a mess of it. You let the pigs in, they're going to make a pigsty. Okay. Brown couldn't mask his frustrations with the offensive dynamic. His sideline demeanor and social media messaging became a weekly conversation. Multiple team sources say they never saw Brown and Hurts engage in an argument during the season, which is very interesting, and were professional throughout the whole season. But both also tended to internalize issues, which led to a lack of communication. One of the team sources said clearing the air probably doesn't happen as often as it should. And so
Dude, you played D1 football. I was in the military for 8.5 years. Like, if there's one, like, what's that old saying? Like, boys will be boys.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
dude, like, I get it, man. Like, but like, sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes you just got to be
100%.
like, look, bro, like, what are you doing? I would be so curious if, like, the Eagles hired like a leadership executive coach for the team, like us, and
Yeah.
and like one of the
Hint,
strategies
hint.
would
Yeah.
like are there media obligations in the contract? That's my
Mm.
biggest thing. Like, are you obligated to speak to the media? Okay, if you are, do you have guidelines? Like, do you have perimeters on what you're
What are
allowed to
the
say?
parameters?
And
Exactly.
then two, one of my techniques that like, I feel like this would be so interesting to see. Everyone stay off social media for the first weeks 1 through 8.
Yeah.
And just see. I just want to see
Yeah.
how better you, or limit yourself to an hour a day to see how much better we are as a team. And that might sound stupid, but it's like, I really do believe the algorithm and the media and the social media and all these platforms just feed you just BS, man.
Well, and here's the thing. You even saw this in The Last Dance, like when Jordan was Jordan and the Bulls were running. Media is trying to find everything to put him and the team down. Even to the point where when his father was killed, they were like, "Oh, this is somehow tied to Jordan's gambling issues." And Jordan's like, what are we talking about right now? And you
Yeah,
look and yeah, it's funny to laugh about, but it's like, yeah,
it's
the
crazy.
media needs to get paid. They need to write some BS that has nothing to, and honestly, you look on Facebook nowadays, you don't know what to believe. You don't
Yeah,
know if this is a true statement or clickbait. You have no clue. And
100%.
and so the point of all this is, like you were saying, it's like, yeah, okay. If I was a coach, I'd say, here's the deal. You don't talk to any media. If you talk to media, you're going to get fined. Simple as that. I'm sorry,
Tom,
guys, but
what's
I
up,
want to
dude?
protect this culture. And here's the deal. Hurts and AJ Brown. Okay, all right. I'm gonna pull out the literature on this one, and I want to read just a quick segment from this. This is Abraham Lincoln's Lincoln on Leadership. Okay, so now just bear with me here for a second. After all, a good manager needs to listen at least as much as he needs to talk to. Too many people fail to realize that real communication goes in both directions. Abraham Lincoln it listened, paid attention, and established trust. He worked hard at forging strong relationships with all his subordinates, especially the members of his cabinet and his commanding generals. In some cases, the president overcame intense negative feelings toward him on the part of a few individuals. For example, William H. Seward, Lincoln's Secretary of State, initially thought the president to be well intentioned, yet totally unqualified and incompetent to run the administration and lead the country. There was also some personal animosity involved because Seward had been the frontrunner for the 1860 Republican presidential nomination. So some jealousy, some envy, which of course went to the less well-known, more middle-of-the-road candidate, Abraham Lincoln. After accepting the offer to become Secretary of State, Seward attempted to influence Lincoln's selections for the rest of the cabinet. However, he found that the president-elect to be firm and resourceful, with a distinct mind of his own. He became so frustrated in his efforts to change Lincoln's mind that he submitted his resignation even before the inauguration. Hint, hint. This is somehow very interestingly, conveniently paralleled with what's going on with A.J. Brown right now. But immediately after taking the oath, Lincoln met with Seward and, appealing to his patriotic duty and sense of self-worth, persuaded him to stay on. Now, in the early months of the new administration, Seward attempted to lead the war effort and direct the cabinet himself. But again, he found Lincoln to be much stronger than he envisioned at first. When Seward undertook private and secret negotiations with the South, assuring its leaders that Fort Sumter would be evacuated, Lincoln overruled him by deciding to resupply the fort. The overzealous Secretary of State then sent the president a chastising memorandum that outlined, here's your social media tweet, that outlined what he felt the policy should be toward the South. He even suggested that the U.S. instigate a war with a foreign country to unify the nation against the common enemy. Lincoln promptly responded with a letter of his own, the substance of which was probably also delivered to Seward orally. If such policies were to be instituted, I must do it, said Lincoln. Seward found out immediately that the new president would be tough and decisive. Undaunted, later in 1861, he attempted to push Lincoln into the conflict with England after the British vessel Trent was captured. Despite all this early turmoil, here's the whole point I'm trying to get at. Despite all this early turmoil and the differences of opinion between Seward and Lincoln, they soon became allies. The president would stop by the secretary's home for long visits, during which the two men would take turns telling funny stories and anecdotes. They would also take carriage rides together in and around Washington, often viewing the troops and fortifications. After they got to know each other, it turned out that they had similar political views. They shared a deep commitment to the nation, a strong penchant for common sense, and high ethics and values. Soon, Seward was making numerous suggestions for Lincoln's speeches and proclamations, and Lincoln was inclined to interfere very little in his foreign affairs, preferring instead to delegate that responsibility and authority to the Secretary of State. Now, I know that was a lot, but the reason why I bring that up is because it's very similar to what we're dealing with right now. We have two strong egos. We have differences of opinion, to the point where even Seward wanted to back down. He's like, you know what, hell with this. This guy doesn't want anything to do with me or my strong opinions. Lincoln, and even I just thought it was funny how he's like, yeah, this guy's unfit. He's like arguably the one of the best presidents we've ever had. But Lincoln, instead of saying, quieting down, not doing a thing, just saying, hey, hell with Seward, he'll do his own thing, he took the time to build a relationship with him. He would visit him in his house. They'd share stories. And that is very common with Lincoln. You see that time and time again, where it's he leads by telling stories and his sense of humor, and sharp as a tack, very decisive, but they found common ground. So the recipe for this, and the whole point of all this, is that Hurts in one point in the article said that he actually did talk to A.J. Brown, but this was January 2026. Jalen, why the hell didn't you talk to him sooner? Why are you not having these conversations with him? If there is turmoil and the whole team can sense it, I'm sure you can sense it too. So why are you not investing in building a relationship with A.J. Brown? Because there's a very good chance that had you have done that, we wouldn't be in trade talks right now. You would see that, hey, Jalen's like, hey man, I know you want to get some passes. And Patullo over here is trying to implement some things that I'm not as accustomed to. I tell you what, let's both buy into what he's doing right here, okay? Because if we can do that, I guarantee we're both going to have success, because now the defense is going to be getting different looks. Now they're not going to be doing zone coverage every single Sunday, which means you're going to see more man-to-man. And that's where you excel. A.J. Brown excels in man-to-man coverage.
Yep.
So the whole point of this is, it's like if leaders invest time with their subordinates or with their teammates, build that relationship, build that trust, you're not going to have all this turmoil and they're both internalizing it, creating more toxic environment. You're not going to have that. Spend the time to invest and show your compassion to your teammates and let them see who you are. As an introvert, I can say this. Yes, we do internalize a lot of things, but as a leader, doesn't mean that an introvert can't be a leader. Sometimes introverts are the best leaders because they're always constantly thinking in their head, internalizing things. How can I come up
especially
with the chemistry? But you've
especially
got to be vocal.
yeah, especially with how talented AJ Brown is. And then, I think I had said this in one of our past episodes, but like one of my mentors is he's an executive at NASCAR. And I had said this before, like he asked me a question one time in one of our calls, who's the most important person on a team that is supposed to like you? And I'm like, well, like snap of a finger, I'm like the head coach. And he goes, you're wrong. And this guy has worked with in the sports world for years, dude, like, 40 years at this point. Is no, it's the best player on the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was like, if you get signed to the Patriots, is it important for Bill Belichick to like you or Tom Brady? And I would argue, I would probably say Bears, but he goes, it's most important. He didn't say this, but like taking what he said, it's like it makes sense, dude. It's most important for Tom Brady, the leader of the team, to like
Hmm.
you, value your input,
Hmm.
and level with you and
Yeah.
talk to you every day. If it imagines, and you can't be effective if you don't. And I've even
Yeah.
seen that in the military. Like I remember when I switched to second platoon from first platoon and I like didn't want to be there. And
Yeah.
like the only way I knew how to relate and to be accustomed to my new work environment was like, oh, I got to talk to my peers, man.
Yeah.
Like, three of us were outside squad leaders that were never inside that platoon. And we got moved there and we were like, all right, like we've never worked with each other. The only way to do this is like, all right, where are we getting lunch at? Where are we getting beers
Yeah.
tonight? Like,
Yeah.
let's, what are we doing? Like,
Break bread. Yeah.
we have to break bread and we have to make this thing work because if we don't, the platoon which the team is going to drastically fail
Yeah.
if we don't do this.
Absolutely.
But like you said, man, like you waited till January.
Yeah. What are we doing?
What are we doing?
Why does it take, why did it take so long,
How
man?
about June of 25?
Yeah.
How about regular phone calls? How about like, hey man, how you doing this offseason? What's
And
working out?
this was brewing at the Super
For
Bowl run.
sure. In the Super
Yeah.
Bowl, he was screaming at Nick Sirianni, which God, dude, like it's so tough, but like I can sympathize. This sounds crazy, man, but I can sympathize with AJ Brown.
Yeah.
He's yelling, like, what are we doing? And then the first target he has of the game scores a touchdown
Right.
or a slant. Go
Right.
figure. Or a drag
Right.
route. It was like 12-yard drag route across the middle of the field.
It's it's
And
it's it's very evident that the communication is not clear. He's unsure of the expectations. He doesn't know what's going on. And like and not that that's of any fault to him. It's like because we have this quarterback who's changing plays on the line. We have no trust in the coaching staff and the offensive coordinator. I'm assuming at this point they probably had a little more trust in the offensive coordinator because it's Kellen Moore, but he knows that there's tension. There's probably tension even leading up to the Super Bowl. And he's probably like, well, yeah, exactly. What the hell are we doing? And then we also have this introverted quarterback that doesn't want to talk to anybody unless it
Yeah.
has to do with something about winning, which I would argue that is one of the most important things you could do. And the most overlooked thing is just communicating with your teammates and building a relationship. In order to have a team, you have to have a shared conflict and yet that you have to be able to go through it together, but you also need to be able to break bread with them.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that I'm expecting AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts to be best friends. Nobody is saying that.
No.
But you do need to have trust with each other. In order to
Yeah.
have that, it's like you got to find some common ground. And the common purpose. It's like, hey, we want to win. Okay,
I'll,
that's clearly what Jalen's radar is. He wants to win.
I'll give
Um,
you a great example to shift onto a positive note. A group of guys that never get the credit on any team that have built such a bond, even though they're banged up, the offensive line.
100%.
And as banged up as they are, dude, I'll take that offensive line with over any offensive line. in the NFL.
They clearly have some things. They got, obviously bruises, some bandit. I can't even find my words here, but they got to lick their wounds this offseason.
Yeah,
There you go.
for
Like they
sure.
got to,
But
and without a
you're
doubt. But
talking a group of dudes that have built a bond. I mean, they made a Christmas album.
right, right.
Like,
This is not rocket science.
I'm not saying you're gonna do that, but like,
Yeah.
but like, shit,
Well,
man.
you know, uh, are you okay on time? By the way, I know we're
I'm good.
over.
Yeah, I'm good.
I've
Yeah.
got a couple more things I want to hit, but
Yeah.
we're on a train right now. All right. So the war in the Pacific, okay, and these the Marines and the sailors were just constantly talking about, hey, at the end of the day, it's like they go through this very hard thing together. That's blowing guys up left and right, Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, all these different things. But at the end of the day, they always had the ship ride back and they always had the time together. It's they're when you're going through all these different challenges, which are going to bring teams together, you still need that second element, which is forming these bonds with your teammates so that they trust you, so that you still have to give them the authenticity. You have to let them know who you are, and you got to
So,
get to know them, and
so
that's key.
at the end of my time in the 82nd, I remember I did like this review, like in my own head. I'm like, all right, like especially now that I've been reviewing, like, talking through, my military history, and I'm like, man, like I really had a lot of fun. But like I asked myself, I'm like, what do I miss the most about it? And I've come to find out with like a lot of like thought, I never liked doing, and this is anyone, like I love doing hard shit, but I don't think anyone likes doing like I like doing the hard stuff because I it's hard and it feels good, but like that's the key,
Yeah.
the other side of it.
Hmm.
And I remember like in the military, I'm like, I never like to say like I enjoyed rucking in in 50-degree weather, getting rained on. It's fogged out. I'm covered. I'm soaking wet, and I have 20, 15 miles to go, 15 clicks to go, in the middle of the night in Louisiana. Like, no, that was miserable. But the bond, I didn't ever want to miss something like that because I knew on the other side of it, I can't gain that type of relationship and capital or, bond in any other environment anywhere else that I go. And
Yeah,
that's why
absolutely.
like guys, like I remember when I missed the deployment to Afghanistan, I was in ALC, and all of my platoon, everyone I deployed with to Iraq went to Afghanistan to do the withdrawal. And it was a terrible
Mm,
deployment. I mean, it was just brutal. Like the whole situation was terrible, and I won't go into that, but I remember being so upset because one, I'm like, man, every single dude that I've trained with for the past 2 years, I deployed with to Iraq already, is going to do this withdrawal, and I'm not going there.
yeah,
So I'm going to have a hard time if anything does happen to, like, I'm sitting in Georgia and I can't leave.
right.
But two, they're going to get back and I'm so happy for them because they're going to be so bonded together.
Hmm.
But like a part of my heart was like, damn, dude, like my time here, I was on orders. I was going to be a recruiter. I knew my time was coming up. And it was just like, damn, like this stuff really does come to an end. But I knew the bond that they were going to have together was going to be something that I would never, I've experienced it, coming back from Korea and coming back from
Yeah.
Iraq. But like, it's just, I was going to miss that.
Man,
But
I
that,
and
that,
I
those,
that's
those
you're
types,
so on point there. Like
yeah, like
that
those
is
types of
exactly the
things.
point we're trying to make.
Yeah, like those
It's
types of scenarios, like dude, it's so important. Like even after the NFC, like the championship game where he's just like smoking a cigar in the corner.
yeah,
Like I
by
get
himself.
it because he's like, like, he's probably was watching film on the way home, from 2 years ago from
Yeah.
the AFC championship game. But like at some point, man, you
Be
gotta be able to break bread with your
be in
team,
there
be
celebrating with your
in there
teammates.
celebrating with these guys. Like it is so important, man.
Well, and
Because
I'll just
Tom
if I can
Brady,
add,
yeah, go ahead,
um,
yeah.
because it just made me think about that. It's like that's one of the reasons why I wanted to join the military in the first place is to find that feeling that I had playing ball again. It's
Yeah.
in high school. I mean, let's not sugarcoat this. It's practices suck. I always hated practices.
They
Games are
suck.
fun. Games are fun.
They're a blast, dude.
Practices are terrible. But it's what happens in the locker room afterwards. Just talking up with your boys, talking shop. It's, let's be real here. Like there was, the Friday night parties
Yeah, dude.
it's just like you go to college, you're going through two-a-days, which are a distant memory. But
They're
going through
very real
two-a-days,
now.
you're in the players lounge and you're playing spades with your guys. Like that's what gets you
Yeah,
through it.
and that's what gets you through it, dude, and I remember coming back from, like, we do, like, a jump, right? And we would do a
Yeah.
jump. It's like you're on chalk, whatever, and you're exiting at 1:30 in the morning, always got pushed an hour or 2. So you're sitting inside of it on the drop zone with all your buddies at the rally point at, like, 3:30 in the morning. And, like, that's where the bonds are made. The
Yep.
bonds aren't made from exiting the aircraft. Like, they are, but, like, the true bonds are made when, like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're tired, you're covered in sweat, you smell
Yeah.
terrible, you have a huge dip in your mouth because that's the only thing that can keep you awake.
And so does the guy next to you. Yeah.
Yeah, so the guy next
Who's
to you, and you're
feeling the exact same thing.
yeah, dude, and you're not learning about you're not talking anything related, you're talking about, like, where that person's from. Where,
Exactly. Exactly.
what their parents do. What do they have siblings? What do they wanna do after the military? Like, so many important things are talked about in situations like that, that I think oftentimes in professional sports, not just, the NFL, get overlooked. But they get overlooked because they're getting paid so much, because in the military and what used to be in
Yeah, you
college,
go with it. Go with it. Yep.
yeah,
I know exactly where we're going with
I
this.
the pay in the military and in college sports, what used to be, and in high school, you're not getting paid. So the only thing you
Mm.
have is the bond with one another. That's it. That you don't
Preach.
have the paycheck and the mansion to go home to. In professional sports, you don't have a bond because you're going home to your $2 million mansion with your dogs and your sports car. So you don't care to have a bond with anyone else. You're getting a paycheck
That's
regardless.
right. That's right.
And it's like in the military, that's all you have is a brotherhood and a
And
bond.
I would argue here that your affection and that I can't even find the words here, but like that feeling you have with your boys and stuff like that becomes your social media. It's like, cause they'll listen
Yeah.
to you, right? It's like that. It's that toxic mistress is your social media, right?
Yeah, dude.
And that's what's giving you that what's missing.
Yep.
It's like one of the things I was thinking about is what Ray said last week, or 2 weeks ago when we recorded that. It's that where is the bond of that Ranger brotherhood formed? It's because you don't want to let down the guy next to you. That's the last thing
Dude.
you ever want to do. And
Yeah, man.
do you think Jalen Hurts or AJ, especially AJ Brown, do you think he gives a shit about letting Jalen Hurts down? No, not at all.
And
Because
that
he's
and
so consumed with himself, man.
that is
There's
the biggest problem in professional sports.
eh,
It's across every single organization, if you ask me. Like,
100%.
we have made this into celebrity fanfare. It's an entertainment company, and it's exactly like I think ESP well, I don't wanna trash ESPN because I watch it every day, and I do like ESPN. I I have met a lot of great people that have worked for ESPN, so I don't wanna, like, through the army. Um, but ESPN, it's a sports media.
Right.
It's a news network, man, for sports. So, like,
Clicks are everything.
clicks are
Having an audience.
everything,
And
and
nobody likes to hear good news. Everybody wants that bad news. We
everyone
want to
wants the
hear,
bad news, man.
yeah. Oh, we
Everyone
want to
wants
hear that Super Bowl team is now going in
yeah,
freaking
is
turmoil right
is
now.
a dumpster fire. Like,
That's right. That's right.
they don't wanna hear it, like, and they know that, dude. They know that. The
Oh,
executives
100%.
in all these news outlets know that. They're not, like,
Right.
fooling it, dude. They know that's gonna grab the attention of the public and of the
That's right.
people that watch the sports, and, like, that's why I think the NFLPA needs to get involved and be like, "Look, dude, stop talking. Like, here's your guidelines." Like, in the military, dude, at Army marketing, we didn't we had, like, a, what are they called? What are they called? I'm going blank. We're a public affairs officer.
Yeah.
And I remember when I did the interview I did in 2024 for X Games, like, one, so bad at interviewing. It's the most embarrassing interview. You can find it on the X Games page, but, like,
I'm going to have to
two,
check that out.
two, I was nervous. It was 7:30 in the morning, whatever. too, like, there's a lot of things that I talked to the public affairs guy, and he was standing right there, and he's like, "Hey, man, like, if you don't wanna say anything or you're unsure, you look at me and just give me the look, and I'll be like, I'll cut the interview." And, like, having that support from an external person that was like, "I'm here to ensure that this goes smoothly and you don't say anything insane and to offend anyone," or not that I would, but also, like, that this is just a solid interview, on not counting the fact that I'm awkward and weird, like on camera, but, it was having that external factor. So maybe that's a good opportunity for the NFLPA to be like, maybe we just place public affairs guys in, you know? Or that's never gonna happen. That's probably very premature. I brought up Tom Coughlin earlier, and I brought up this before. Tom Coughlin, in order to keep that style that he had in the big market he had in New York for the Giants. All right, you're late? Cool.
Yeah.
You're fined.
Accountability.
Give me $10,000. Do you
An
want a team?
accountability structure that is clear, it's organized, it's fair. Right.
Dude,
Say
and
less.
you
Say
could
less.
you could be Eli Manning at that time, dude. If you weren't 5 minutes early to the meeting,
Yeah.
you're getting fined
It goes
$10,000.
for everybody. Don't care who you are.
Here's the
This is
policy.
our rule.
It's
Yeah.
black and white. Follow it, or I'm taking your money.
So we hit, and I want to kind of I want to kind of put a button on this here just to kind of hit on the main things that we hit on. So number one, it's like, hey, okay. So our leadership take on this is, hey, firm accountability, a firm but fair accountability structure. Okay. You can't win with one guy. All right. And another thing is break bread with your teammates. Break bread with the teammates. Okay. You're putting in the work ethic. We get you, Jalen. You're a great quarterback. Absolutely. And we get you're an introvert. And there's a lot of leaders out there that are introverts, but the difference there is, and what you really need to do is you still got to break bread with your teammates. And I know that may be uncomfortable, and it's extremely hard, especially with the stature that he is. But there's always time, and that needs to be prioritized. You can't be filling out your day so much with all the different tasks and all the different, the sponsorship deals and all these different things, which I get are extremely important to support you and your family, but you also got to make sure you're carving out time to spend time with your teammates, because that's who's going to hold you back. That way, we don't have to have anonymous team sourcing saying how much there's toxicity and all this turmoil going on the team. You wouldn't have that. They would always have your back. And you know what? They'd come to you before they go to the press, 100%.
Yep.
And the last thing I want to say is a leader's job is ongoing. Okay. Because one of the other points here is that there's this push against changing the status quo. The last book I'm going to reference is Leading with the Heart. This is my Coach K, which I think is timely. Sucks to be for the Duke fans. I'm so sorry that you got let down this year, but Coach K knows something about success. And in this book, he talks about on page 31, continual learning is a key to effective leadership because no one can know everything there is to know. In leadership, things change. Leadership is all about change because leaders are always encountering new situations. They have to learn how to meet new challenges, adapt, confront, to master, to win. You must be able to encounter these situations, adapt, and overcome. When you stop growing, you start to decay. A leader's job is ongoing. It's like a ring. There's no end. Leadership never stops. Okay, and the last thing I want to say is on page 173, a leader's responsibility to his team is paramount. It overshadows even his own personal feelings at any given moment. Leadership, like basketball, is a game of adjustments. If a leader is too structured, he'll be unable to adjust quickly, unable to seize the moment with decisiveness. So the whole point here is, from Coach K's words, who, by the way, coached Michael Jordan, the most important thing here is, yes, we understand that you have your comfort zone, and that has given you success. But teams are going to adjust to you. Teams want to win. And what are they going to do? Just like they did with Michael Jordan back in 1989, is they're going to do their best to take you out of the equation because they want to win too. So we need to adapt. We need to stay in that uncomfortable zone for a short term. I mean, you're not going to be uncomfortable in that situation for a long period of time because you're going to grow, you're going to adapt, and you're going to become better. And I would argue that the best quarterback best quarterbacks of all time, were not structured in one dynamic. They were dynamic. They were under center. They were in shotgun. There was motioning going on, and every single great quarterback, behind every single great quarterback, was a great offensive scheme, a great offensive structure with craziness going on. It's almost like Jim Mattis, call sign chaos. He wanted to create chaos because that's how we succeed. He
I
wanted the
mean,
defense to be dumbfounded, right?
they talk about that all the time, and a lot of military books and a lot of military individuals will say controlled chaos.
Control chaos. You want to
Controlled
create the fog of
that
war for the defense.
it should be terrible.
Right.
It should be like 100%. I have no idea if I'm on the opposing team, like, what did we just get hit with?
You got to approach it with humility. And then I think just to kind of talk about what we talked about with Ray 2 weeks ago, it's you have to lead with humility. That means you have to be coachable. You have to be okay with these new things because you have to trust that the coaches have a better strategic picture of what's going on. And it doesn't mean that you can't give your input. You've earned your input. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to make a call. And in most cases, that's going to be the coach, unless he adopts parameters that are clearly set that allow you to give you that flexibility. And a good coach should give you that flexibility.
For sure.
But you also have to trust them in these critical moments. You have to trust and rely on coaches. So I just want to just kind of button it off with that. Maybe we'll see what happens next year. I will say this much. I think as an Eagles fan, there's a lot to be looking forward to next year. I don't know what's going to happen in June. A.J. Brown may be gone, but I'll tell you this much: he shouldn't be. And I feel
No, I
like
agree.
if he is traded, I think that's a big disappointment and a failed opportunity. I think would be the best way to put that. I think he has some miles left. He's only 28. I think, and if I was the coach, I would encourage him and Jalen Hurts to get on the same page. I'd say,
100%.
guys, spend a lot of time together. That's all I need you to do. We'll work on the offensive schemes when the time comes. We got, spring ball coming up here soon. We'll work on that. But right now, I want you to work on you guys because I need you both in order to succeed. I feel like that needs to be the recipe. And whatever happens, I think Eagles fans do have a lot to look forward to. It seems like based on that article, Jalen has demonstrated that he's open to these changes. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.